to our web. Okay, thank you for that. Uh, I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar, From Risk to Resilience, Strengthening Communities Through Climate Resilient WASH. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our website. A couple of housekeeping rules. Please keep your devices on mute. Questions can be posted on the chat and will be read to our presenter. If you're uncomfortable going on chat, you can raise your hand, but at the end of the webinar, not during the webinar itself. Before we begin, I'd like to just read our land acknowledgement. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral territories of all the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples who have been stewards of this land from time immemorial and who have chosen to share their knowledge and wisdom. As GRAN activists, we take this opportunity to commit ourselves to the struggle against the systems of oppression and colonialism that have dispossessed Indigenous peoples.
Okay.
Somebody needs to put their on mute. Sorry to interrupt the land acknowledgement. I'm just going to read that last part again. As GRAN activists, we take this opportunity to commit ourselves to the struggle against the systems of oppression and colonialism that have dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their land and denied their rights to self-determination. This advocacy is essential to
Sorry, Sandy, I muted you by mistake.
Okay. Oh dear. So Ruth Buckinger is on the GRAN WASH team and she will introduce our presenter.
Okie doke. I'm here to introduce Adnan, but I think it would be lovely if everyone who's here from WaterAid today just says a quick hello to everyone. So if you could unmute yourself and give us a wave, that would be great.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
And I see Freya on my screen right now. I saw Adnan, Julie, and is it Jennifer was here?
Yes.
Yeah, Jennifer
Hi.
is also here.
Did you want us to do a quick intro or we're
No, just tell
no.
us your name and say hi and
okay.
your position at WaterAid would be great.
Oh, sure. Okay, I'll just kick it off. My name is Freya Struthers. It's so nice to see so many people. This is a really great start to this space. I'm excited to be here. I work on the fundraising team at WaterAid Canada. I've been here for about 6 years, and I'm located in Chelsea, Quebec. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'll go next. My name is Jennifer Hillier. I'm excited to be here. I'm the interim EA and admin at WaterAid, and I'm based in Toronto.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Trulev. I'm the head of policy and advocacy here, and really glad to be working with the grants through this year and working closely with Adnan as well. So thanks for coming together. You guys are always such an amazing group to host these things and come together for discussion. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Julie. Adnan, you don't get to introduce yourself. I get to introduce you. So I will do that. So we're really delighted to have Adnan Qader here with us from WaterAid Canada. His position is as Water Governance and Resilience Manager. Before I say a little more about Adnan, I'm just going to say just a real shout out to WaterAid. WaterAid is a new partner for GRAN this year, and it's been just so lovely to work with them on the WASH team. They have been so responsive to our questions, to our needs for information, or even help with graphics, all kinds of things. And I really encourage any of you who are here today to take a minute to Google WaterAid Canada and go check out their website, because there's all kinds of wonderful information on there and the great work they're doing on water sanitation and hygiene in the world. WaterAid Canada is part of a larger federation of other water aids around the world. As far as I can tell from the website, besides Canada, there's Australia, India, Japan, Sweden, the UK, and the USA, and they are all working in tandem to work on this issue. So I recommend you check out their website. But back to Adnan. He leads WaterAid Canada's global climate coordination. His work bridges governance and justice-based approaches to building resilience to climate change by advancing water security and WASH. He started his career as an environmentalist, an activist, and researcher before transitioning to public policy. He holds a master's degree on climate science from the University of Waterloo and an advanced degree in public policy from the London School of Economics. Now, those are just the bio basics, but I think you'll find as he starts to present that you're going to discover that Adnan is so passionate about the work he does, that he really cares about this and he cares about the people that he meets in doing this work. I had the lovely opportunity of going through what he might be presenting today with him, and his head is just so packed with information, but his heart is full of real passion for this work. So Adnan, welcome to GRAN's
Thank you so
gathering,
much.
and take it away.
Thank you so much. Before I start, I just wanted to recognize I'm from Ottawa, which is located in unceded territory of Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived in this territory for millennia and are traditional guardians of this lands and water. And I'm an immigrant settler. I acknowledge my responsibility to learn from the Indigenous stewardship, particularly in the face of climate change, and to support sustainable and respectful relationships with land and water. Before I start, I'll share my screen. Just give me a second. All right, let's get to it. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So I'll be doing a full screen, so I can't see questions. Ruth, please, if you want to ask questions, please tell me to stop, and I will pause my presentation. So today's presentation, we had a lovely presentation on the last webinar from Julie. We walked you through the basics of water, sanitation, and hygiene. Today, we are going to look into how climate change impacts water, sanitation, hygiene. And to do that, I'll walk you through some basics, which is very important for you to understand. Basically, the takeaways would be that these little things you can use in your own advocacy or the joint advocacy and campaigns you do from your organization. So I'll quickly start off with the background. I will touch something about the Joint Monitoring Program ladder. What is it? I will walk you through it. Before jumping into how climate change is impacting water, sanitation, hygiene, then I will talk about the million-dollar question, what is resilience and what is climate resilience WASH. So before we go into it, it's very important to understand the current status quo of things, how climate change is impacting water. So 2.2 billion people globally lack safe drinking water, and 3.4 billion lack safe sanitation. How do we define safe drinking water? I'll be coming to that. That's the Joint Monitoring Program. But if I may continue with the facts, worldwide, 7 in 10 women and adolescent girls are responsible for collecting water, spending 200 million hours every day to collect that water, which could be used elsewhere. Elsewhere in the sense in education, self-growth, helping one another. That entire time goes into collecting water. We are seeing vast number of climatic hazards that have taken and gripped the world right now. And as we celebrate Earth Day, it's important to understand how these hazards are also impacting the Earth as we speak. Flood, increase in flood is destroying water and sanitation systems. It's contaminating the drinking water source. It's impacting healthcare centers. It's impacting simple hand dug wells that has been the life source of many of this 2.2 billion people who relies on those little shallow waters. Those water sources are also disappearing. So if you're wondering, like if you wake up, go to the washroom, turn on your tap, you have water. This is not the reality of most people. But we are here to learn about how climate change is impacting that. But before that, we have to do the baby steps, okay? So I love using cartoons. And the first two things we're going to learn is accessibility and service, okay? So imagine the iceberg is melting, all of us are here, and we're questioning why do we need to learn about service and access before we understand the impacts of climate change on water, sanitation, hygiene. So before we learn about that, I mentioned that we will walk you through the joint monitoring program. Basically, it was founded by WHO and UNICEF, and these two organizations jointly monitors the global system and tracking access for water, sanitation, hygiene. They are the ones who have defined basic and safely managed water sources or sanitation or hygiene. And these indicators are collected from household surveys and national statistics. And just for everyone's information, the Canadian government is also responsible for providing data to the joint monitoring program. I will walk you through some definitions, and this is very important. So if you have your thinking caps on, notes and pens, the first definition we have to learn today is access, okay? Access is a very easy term to understand, but in the context of WASH, we refer access to basically whether people can reach and use water, sanitation, hygiene facilities. It's easy to imagine or waking up and going to the washroom and having a tap or a toilet, but it's not usually the case for that 2.2 billion people. They don't have access to tap water or sanitation services, right? Another term we use is universal access, which basically means that everyone, everywhere has access to the minimum service to water, sanitation, hygiene without any barriers. And as I go through this, barriers here, please vision barriers as climate change. Service refers to the level and quality of water, sanitation, hygiene provisions people receive. Again, we pay the water utility bills. The government provides us with running water supply. Again, this is not the reality of that 2.2 billion people. Improved drinking source is another definition we use. And I'm sorry, I'm going through definitions, but it will all make sense eventually as I go through the next slides. Improved drinking source basically means that a certain water source is constructed and designed in a manner, for example, piped water, tube wells, or a protected spring, for example, that can deliver that basic water service, okay? And improved sanitation, basically, as the name suggests, that are facilities that are designed hygienically. It's separated from human excreta. It has access to flush. It has access to sewer systems, septic tanks, or pit latrines, for example. So these are the basic levels the joint monitoring program has set out for everyone globally. And against this basic infrastructures or service or access, things are measured. All right. So this is what JMP does. And this is done through a ladder. Basically, imagine climbing a ladder. People with no water access, that is the surface water, as I talked about, that 2.2 billion people relies on. For example, collecting untreated water from rivers and lakes, that sits at the lowest ladder, step of the ladder. And in the highest level is the safely managed one, okay? I'll not focus on the others, but I'll focus on safely managed and basic. Safely managed basically talks about having that water source in your premises. You don't have to walk 30 minutes to fetch water, or you don't have to walk 30 minutes to relieve yourself. Those are safely managed, okay? And it's free from contamination. And it's important to understand the word contamination here is because we are talking about health as well, okay? But in reality, for most people, safely managed is not available. Most people have to walk long distance to fetch water, or are in areas where they have to share their toilets or latrines. All right. So that's the ladder, or the JMP ladder. You need to remember to understand how climate change is impacting water sanitation hygiene. But before I go into that bit, I just would like to ask everyone, can you identify, for your years of wisdom and knowledge, can you identify communities who has no access to water or sanitation, or they have no access or limited access where they have to walk long distances, or they have to boil water to drink that? If you put that in the chat, that would be lovely. Or if anyone's raising their hand, please let me know. Shall I continue then? Anyone?
Adnan, you can continue. Could you
All right.
could you please put your slides on full screen?
Aren't they not in full screen?
No. At least they're not on my iPad.
You might have the wrong view, Sandy. I've got mine on speaker view. You might have it on the gallery view. It might be
okay.
your choice.
Oh my God, I just hit original size and now I can't see it at all. Never mind. Ignore me. I'll just go on fit to window. Those are the only options I have.
Sandy,
right,
that number of comments in the chat for you to read, Adnan,
Okay.
or Ray.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
For me, we were on boil water last summer in Trenton for the cleanup of their water mains.
Yeah.
We also have the many Indigenous communities in Canada. Also, let's see, Vancouver downtown East Side street folks have very limited access. And I'm assuming, Mary, that that's to water, sanitation, and hygiene because they live on the streets. We have 30 or more First Nation reserves do not have clean water, and many Northern Indigenous communities lack access to safe drinking water. So you've got some of our answers there. Okay.
Perfect answers. And those are the answers I was looking for. And imagine that even when in a place like Canada, when we have access to tap water, whenever we want, there are areas that still don't have access to water. And what organizations like WHO, UNICEF, WaterAid, we're trying and striving to achieve is the safely managed at the highest level in the ladder, so that people everywhere, everyone has access to it. But unfortunately, even when we're striving to achieve safely managed, something else is happening, right? So is creating safely managed systems enough? Unfortunately, no, because climate change is changing that reality for us. Even if we're trying to provide safely managed, we are unable to do so. Of course, there are other factors that goes into it, but for the sake of today's discussion and webinar, I'll stick to climate change. So, how is climate change impacting water, sanitation, hygiene? But before I go into that, these are some of the realities from around the world, okay? We are seeing a famous image on your left is the cloudburst that was taken first in Arizona back in 2017. We have cloudburst is basically when there's a high retention of water vapor due to rapid heating in the atmosphere. And we have a concentrated downpour of high rainfall in an area that are not used to that much of a rainfall. And that results in flooding and disrupted system. And since 2017, due to climate change, we are seeing more areas of cloudburst happening. So a decade or 2 decades ago, we used to get normal rainfall in specific seasons. Now we are getting abnormal rainfall due to cloudbursts. And the recent rainfall, the abnormal rainfall you're witnessing right now is due to that atmospheric change. The Toronto flooding is nothing new. And this again impacts your water sanitation hygiene systems the government has built and invested on in decades. But again, no one is anticipating such level of devastations or flooding that rapidly and that frequently. The picture on your top right is from Bangladesh, and that's a picture of a destroyed latrine from a cyclone. And as someone mentioned earlier, that the indigenous communities are basically in the unimproved or a less than limited supply of water sanitation hygiene, if I compare the latter. But this will further increase as we go down the years. Even now in 2026 has been predicted as the hottest year. So there's a 99% percentile chance that 2026 will impact these communities even more compared to what they have gone through. So climate change impacts people in different manner, and I will break down the basics of it. So all you need to remember is what are the different kinds of climate shocks. So you have sea level rise, increase in temperature, which I think most of you are familiar with, increase in rainfall, as I've shown the picture, droughts, then sea level rise is causing high level of salinity intrusion in the coastal belts. Then you have cyclones, then you have flash floods, right? But how is that related to water sanitation hygiene? Basically, there are 6 ways climate change impacts water sanitation hygiene. It's water quality, quantity, equity, affordability, accessibility. If you remember the cartoon I showed you, the wash infrastructures and health, all right? So all those climate shocks and stresses are negatively impacting these 6 areas of water sanitation hygiene. That leads to the accessibility and service, which I mentioned earlier. Basically, if I take the example of sea level rise, it's impacting your water quality because you have more salinity in the water, and the sea level rise is eventually impacting the fresh groundwater reserves. So saline water is seeping into the groundwater, making them inaccessible for drinking purposes. So you have more island states, coastal countries suffering due to sea level rise. Then you have flooding, which is very common in Canada, which is again impacting services. How is it impacting services? You have damaged infrastructures, and every flooding and monsoon season, the Toronto area people are have to retrofit their basements so that flood water doesn't seep into the septic tank. So these are very common examples, but your main takeaway from this particular slide would be the 6 ways climate change is impacting WASH. It's quality, quantity, equity, affordability, accessibility, WASH infrastructures, and health. All right. If you have any questions, please, I'll pause here and I'll show a quick video for you to understand and grasp the emotions behind it as well. Ruth, do you have any questions for me?
Ray is monitoring.
No, there's no questions in the chat right now, Adnan. I think you can just go right on with that. Okay.
All right. So I'll quickly show you a video of a visually impaired person from Bangladesh. She lives in the coast and she is suffering from intense, frequent cyclonic events in her home area. And this is another story. So if you are campaigners, if you want to talk about WASH and climate change, these are the sort of impacts and stories we have documented over the years.
আমি চোখে দেখতে পাই না, তবে আমি তো কানে শুনতে পাই। তাই যখন এই ঝড় হয়েছিল অনেক ভয়, অনেক টেনশন, অনেক অসুবিধা, অনেক ইয়ের পরে কষ্টের পরে ছিলাম।
মানুষ তো ঘুরুতড়া করতে লাগলো, সেই সাথে ওর এমন এক টেনশন আসলো।
শব্দ গাছপালা পড়ে এইভাবে, আবার শব্দ হু শব্দটা, ঝড়ের শব্দ, অন্যরকম শব্দ, আরো বৃষ্টি।
যে ওই জন্য মরিয়ে যায় আর এরকম অবস্থা। ওই মেয়ে ও তো চোখে দেখতে পায় না যে কি হইতেছে না হইতেছে, কিন্তু ওই পানির শব্দ আসতেছে আর ওর পোড়ানে পানি নেই।
আরে আমপানি আমাদের আরেকটা অসুবিধা হয়েছিল যে ওই আমাদের ওই ভাই হলো ওই একটা ঘের, মানে ওই জমি হারিতে পরের হারিতে একটা ঘের করতে পার, করার পরে ওই ঘেরটা হলো ওই মাছ 2 বছর ধরে একটা পুকুরি কটা মাছ পুষিল। আর পুষার পরে বললো ওই করোনার জন্য ওই যে ওই বাজারঘাট বন্ধ ছিল, ওই মাছ তুলি বিক্রি করতে পারিনি, না পারার পরে এই আমপানে এসে মাছ করা সব চলে গেল, ঝড়ে অত পানি এসে। তারপরে ওই ভাইয়ের অবস্থা, ভাই অনেক টেনশনে ছিল, অনেক যে আল্লাহ কি হলো করলাম, অর্ধেক দামে হলেও মাছ করা যদি বিক্রি করে দিতাম তাহলে হতো। এবার ওই ভাই কোনো সময় সাগরে যায়নি, তো এবার হলো গিয়েছিল, ওর হলো সমস্যা, ওর গায়ে সাদা, ও রোদি কাজ কাম করলেও ঠোলা ওঠে।
10 মাস পানি বন্দি ছিলাম, রাস্তার উপরে যাব, গামছা পরি ছাড়া যাওয়ার কোনো লাইন নেই। আর মেয়ে ছেলেপিলেগুলো এই বারান্দার ওই যে কোলে যে পেশাব পায়খানা সব ওই বারান্দায় বসে পায়খানা পেশাব করতো, ওই স্রোতে চলে যেত আবার আসতো, স্রোতে চলে যেত আবার আসতো, এরকম পানি।
যখন ওই জোয়ারের পানি থাকে এই কানায় কানায়, তখন তো বাথরুমে যাওয়া যায় না। এরপরে ওই গোসল, জোয়ারের পানি চলিয়ে গেলি তারপরে গোসল করতে হয়।
200-300 ঘর এই আমপান আইসে, 200-300 ঘর এই 3 নম্বর ওয়ার্ডের থেকে চলে গেছে বাইরে। তারা এই এলাকায় নেই, এখন বর্তমান নেই, তারা বাইরে আসে, তারা বাইরে বাড়ি করে ঘর বেঁধে দিয়ে, জায়গা জমি তো নেই, তাদের পয়সা করে পাবে কোথায়? একজনের ধরেন আপনার একটু জায়গা দিচ্ছেন, সেইখানে ঘর বেঁধে দিচ্ছে, ওইভাবে রয়েছে।
ফসল কোনো ফসল নাই, একদম ফসল আপনারা তো দেখতে পাচ্ছেন, তখন ফসল গাছগাছালি কিছু নাই।
আগে এত নোনা থাকলে ফসল আদি হতো না, এখন লবণ পানি বেশি হয়েছে, এই জন্যে ধানও হয় না, ফসলও ঠিক মতো হয় না। গাছে একটা নারকেল ডাব, এখন আপনি এরকম আপনারা আসলে আমার এই ব্যবসা জায়গা বিটিয়ে যে গাছ ছিল, তা আপনার ডাব দিয়ে, ডাবের জল দিয়ে খাওয়াতে পারতাম, আর খাওয়াইছি তাই। কিন্তু এখন দেখেন গাছ বলতে নেই, ওই বেগুন লাগিয়ে আমরা ওই বিক্রি করতাম বা খাতাম, সে এক এক বেগুন হতো এরকম বড় বড়, এক এক কেজি একটা ওজন। কোনো সার বা রাসায়নিক জাতীয় কোনো সার ব্যবহার করা লাগতো না, সব সব পরিবর্তন। একটা মানুষের রোগ ছিল না। আর এখন ডাক্তার বাড়ি গেলে সিরিয়াল দিতে ডাক্তারের কাছে যেতে, এত রোগ। আল্লাহ কখন না আপনার হয়তো আজকে দেখেছি, আর কালকে দেখবো কিনা এরা আমার দেহের ভিতরে আর নেই।
So that was the story of Freshman. I'm sorry for the subtitles. If in case if you were not able to follow, I'll just quickly summarize. Basically, imagine a visually impaired person, and during cyclones, I think you have seen the toilet they were pointing out to, and they couldn't use it, so they had to relieve themselves in the veranda or the patio of their house. So that creates a striking image of what happens when you don't have access to or a service of water sanitation hygiene in their facility, in their household or facilities. The father also talked about how different kind of health issues have arisen due to high level of salinity in that area. And he was telling the person who was making the video that if he had come there earlier, he could have fed them. There are so many different kinds of crops that were growing in that area. Unfortunately, they don't see that anymore. There are 300 families that were forced to move out of that area due to the land being unusable. But going back to water sanitation hygiene bit, there was a glimpse of the toilet and latrine, destroyed latrine. And they still, most of the people, this was shot in 2021, most of the people still don't have access to proper sanitation or water services in that area. So that's a real example of how climate change is impacting people's life, and in particular, water sanitation hygiene. So if I move on to the main part of this webinar, which is how we talk about resilience, or what is CR wash. Basically, we are talking about two different things, service and accessibility. And to build resilience, we must figure out how to improve access beyond safely managed. So if you recall the ladder, we have safely managed at the top, but we need to figure out how to go beyond safely managed right now when we're talking about climate resilience. And at the same time, as we build access or enhance community resilience, we also need to figure out how can we provide services that are resilient as well. So one side we have the people, the other side we have the service. And to remember this, we have just picture people, picture wash, and they are accessing water sanitation and hygiene. Then we have climate change. We have climate action as the umbrella, which is increasing resilience of the people against those adverse impacts. Basic stuff, very simple to understand, but I'll walk you through the official resilience language. All right. So resilience basically means that a service or a system must have the resources to anticipate, absorb, or adapt or recover from climate hazards, right? So anticipation simply means that you know which season there will be high level of rainfall or flooding. We were talking about daffodils and tulips before the webinar started. We anticipate when these flowers will bloom. Similarly, communities around the world are aware when to anticipate high level of climatic hazard. It's not enough if we anticipate, we need to figure out which fertilizers we have to give to those flowers. It's similar to absorb, which materials we must use for infrastructures, whether that infrastructures can adapt. That imagine that as a ring fence around your garden. And recovery is if a squirrel comes in and destroys your flowering plant, recovery is similar. Like what happens if a wash system is washed away by flood? How do we figure that out? Interestingly, it wasn't till last year that globally we had a working definition of sanitation water for all. It was made by Sanitation Water for All, with the help of different organizations such as ourselves. And currently we have a working definition of what is climate resilient wash. But it wasn't till last year we didn't have that definition. So why does that matter and how is that related? I'll quickly give you a story before I stop talking. This story is about that lady you can see in the top. Her name is Geeta Roy. And basically, for you to understand what resilience is to understand that it's not just climate proofing or creating an infrastructure that can provide water sanitation and hygiene service for a community. It's also empowering the women and the girls or the elderly, whoever it is we're working for. We must figure out how to give them a platform to increase their leadership abilities. So this lady, she had no access to formal education, but she always had that grit to change how she perceived her surroundings. She wanted to break free from that environment and she wanted to bring change in her community. So she reached out to WaterAid, and with our local partners, we were able to figure out what was the main cause of water sanitation services in her area. We also understood that there was a high level of salinity in her area due to climate impact. So it wasn't as simple as just providing a drinking water source for her family, but it was also to figure out how we maintain a facility that is climate resistant. So with her leadership, she became the owner of that plant, the water clean drinking water plant, and she started with few other ladies. She started maintaining the plant, and she started selling the water. And with that water, she made enough profit to empower her community. And so much so that she was able to create another water plant in that area so that the reach and the cover increases on her own. So WaterAid didn't help her. WaterAid supported her at the beginning. But eventually, as we started creating this opportunity, she did everything by herself moving forward. So she was not only thinking about the current situation, she was also thinking about the long term. And with that, she was able to come out of her poverty. She was able to enroll herself into a basic education. She learned, and eventually she became a union leader in her area. And she was voted by her community to become a union leader. And this is the sort of stories that are coming out of areas where we are able to provide not only water sanitation hygiene services, but also climate proofing her businesses or community businesses so that this group of people are empowered to do this by themselves. And in essence, that is what resilience is. So if you see someone who are struggling, providing them leadership and the knowledge to take forward water sanitation hygiene practices so that they are self-reliant and they are self-aware. So in a nutshell, that is what resilience for water sanitation hygiene is. And I'll end with a positive note that her business approach, what we call the we approach, so it's basically water entrepreneurship for women empowerment approach is a modeled approach recognized by IPCC. It's recognized by the Global Hub for Adaptation, and it is now being replicated throughout the coastal belt of Bangladesh. But it was started from WaterAid. And we use her example as a perfect example for what resilience looks like. With that, I will end my presentation and I'll go into the question answer. Thank you for listening.
Very good.
Thank you extremely muchly. And if anybody's looking at the chat, we can read more about Gita Roy in her story in the Dig Deeper section. Hopefully all of you got our latest small sip on climate resilient wash, and her story's in there, and that's something we enjoy. Thank you. A quick question here, Adnan. Do you know if there are questions about wash on our Canadian census?
Yes, there are many. There are many questions, and especially as we started this discussion, especially involving our indigenous communities, and especially with the new adverse impacts of climate change. You'll see the rainfall, the different long period of snowfall. We are seeing emerging impacts as stories coming out.
Can we go to our statistics? I know we can pull up statistics and stuff from our census and actually get some information about what's going on in Canada. Okay.
Yeah, I will share this after the webinar, but if you go to the JMP statistics for the Canadian government from the Statistics Canada website, you will be able to get it.
That sounds amazing. Anybody got questions? You can put up your hands and I can see them if you have questions for Adnan.
I see Ruth's question. I'll start off with that. Yes, Ruth, it does. So sanitation, if you have a safely managed septic tanks or a sewage system, or if you're managing sewage in a certain manner, you're contributing to carbon sink, and that directly correlates to mitigation. So if you have a carbon sink that reduces methane emission, that is a direct result of having good sewage systems or a septic tank.
Good, thank you. And have the COP gatherings been useful in getting funding for WaterAid programs?
Yes and no. It's deeper than that. Of course, there's politics to it, but it wasn't till 2021 that we had a joint platform with similar water sector minded actors. So it started off with 36 sector actors. Now it's more than 54. Okay. We have the water pavilion, which never existed in the COP process. And the job of the water pavilion is to figure out climate finance for water or water sanitation hygiene.
Okay, thank you. Quick one for me, like listening to Reshma's story and Gita's. Basically, climate change, a lot of times we're looking at we got to handle this huge problem. But it seems that we're into communities that need an in situ solution for where they're at. Have we got that spread thinking, or are we still looking for the big hammer to make this solution?
I always tell that there's the politics of it and there's the reality of it. So WaterAid tries to not be in the politics. We always
Right.
look into the community. And my advice would be that definitely there are organizations and people who are just looking into the community side, and they need to figure out from a macro or micro sense rather than the macro
Right.
picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, okay. Chisat Miofant, hopefully, can you sort of raise your hand and you'll come up and I can see you on my screen then. These slides will be available. You can go to the GRAN's Advocacy Network and they are there. But I love the fact that you're part of the Episcopal Relief and Development section because you do amazing work and that's wonderful. So if you need, obviously you can go to WaterAid Canada, but you can also come to the GRAN's Advocacy Network website, plant yourself on, go under learning events, and we will be there. So please help from there.
We'll have the recording there, Ray, but we haven't asked Adnan if he would share his slides.
Okay.
I will. Definitely, I will.
He will share the slides. There we go. We got a double answer on that. Thank you, Ruth. No problem. Let's ask a general question of everybody. And please, we want to hear your voices. How exactly is climate change affecting water and sanitation in your community? What's happening? We are living through a horrendous last winter, and we've got a hot summer coming. So what's actually happening?
So my greatest joy would be that if you can take the linkages now and put it in your reality. And I think Phyllis has an answer for us. Phyllis, please.
Well,
Phyllis.
I know the trees in Victoria are dying because they're not getting enough water. So we're watching our arbutus and especially the cedar trees dying or getting weaker and weaker. So that's a major one here. And of course, we're all, I think we got up to level 4 water problems last year. So we could only water our gardens very lightly. And most people in Victoria don't water lawns at all because we know how precious that water is.
Okay, Penny, don't forget you're muted. Penny, don't forget you're muted. Thank you.
Thank you. Just briefly, Canada is known for its water, but just recently in Waterloo region, the alarm has gone up that our well sources are drying up. And it's affecting our development. The people can't get permission to develop new homes, etc., because of the water issue.
Okay.
Now, that's not necessarily directly climate and disaster, but it means it's a local concern.
Absolutely. One point for me too, and I'm sorry, I don't like lawns. They take too much water. So I think if we start planting other things, if we want something in the front, like chamomile or white clover, something that'll spread and not take as much water, that would help. And that's a very good question for us, Adnan, and I don't know if you can answer it. It's the women that are walking to collect the water. It's the women that, but are the men not drinking the water or using the water? Are you trying to work on that?
Yeah, I was just actually typing that answer. But,
okay.
Yeah, there are different kinds of, how do I put this, involvement from men in different parts of the society we work in. So there are men who are traditionally misogynistic. They don't want the woman to do anything. Then there are men, unfortunately, they have to go out and seek work and they are not present in their households. And that's why it usually, the women are burdened with collecting water because they look after the household itself. And there are, of course, religious issues. There are societal issues. There are so many different types. But when we sit and try to empower these communities, we do it as a whole. We always take permission from the religious leaders. We take permission from the household head. And there are different areas where women are the household head. But in traditional work culture, the men still goes out and do those traditional jobs. So again, in the areas we have worked, it's usually the woman who needs to get that level of education or literacy level, because again, in areas women drops out of school, adolescent girls drops out of school before boys does, or they're married off. So the targets are definitely based on the geographical location.
I'm old enough to have done my master's in women's studies, and women have, like, look at the start of the Green Belt at the Sahara and what she fought against. Micro enterprises, all of that. And water is affecting all of this now for everyone. And we know that if you educate a woman, she raises her family. We know this. We've got the statistics. So let's keep going on that. I like that, Sharon. You're quite right. A small patch of native wildflowers will help bee populations maintaining our biodiversity, which is really great. Why do extreme weather conditions hit poor areas so badly?
No, it's an age-old curveball we get. Like, why do you always talk about those areas and not? It's like even if you go out, like this is an experiment I used to do when I was studying in Waterloo. I used to go out and go talk to the shopkeepers or the people in the locals, just ask them, just genuinely, do you understand what climate change is? And they will often say, no, it's rubbish, it's politics, I don't want to get into it, I don't believe in it, right? Or the most common answer you'll get is that I have my wants and needs covered. It's not my headache to think about climate change. And that's the economic reality of it.
Right.
Someone who is very attached to the land or the water and they don't have enough, that's why the vulnerable side of things comes out in the discourse that often, right? So, and it's a double-edged sword kind of a way, because right now, from WaterAid, I'll not talk about others, we're struggling to have that meaningful conversations with people who are above that disparity, right? So, talking to people who are voters, who are voting, who have access to education or have access to resources, climate change is slowly creeping up to them, right? And when they're not listening or when they're not talking about it, they pretend like it doesn't exist. So our struggle right now is to empower them rather than the vulnerable communities. It's very interesting if you go into that.
One of someone I definitely, Gloria said once that until the politics becomes personal, they don't believe in it. Is WaterAid involved in the maintenance as well as the establishment of infrastructure?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, to the extent, for example, if I go back to the Geeta Roy story, we empowered them till they can manage. So once they have made enough profit to self-sustain, WaterAid backs out. And they start doing it by themselves.
Right. But I'm going to just step in on this one and say, if they contact WaterAid again,
definitely. We have
you
partners,
would help.
partners in the ground. We have a market system that our these communities rely on. We have gone to that extent to empower our vendors as well. So let's say if a plant, certain parts of the plant is not working, they go to the specific vendors, and if the vendors don't have access, they call us.
Well, do I have any other questions coming up? We're at our 2:00. Now, we'll be following up with an action for our members. So what's the big ask from WaterAid? This is from you guys. Throw it at us. For our federal government when advocating for change, what's the ask you want us to give?
So one thing we didn't talk about, but Ruth talks about in the small SIP article, is that unfortunately, given the political discourse right now, we need that promised climate finance, right? Even nationally and internationally as well. You'll see that government is very iffy about talking about finances. And this story is kind of paints the picture of what reality is. We want our local government leaders to not forget about that. A promise they should keep is a promise they should work on. And we, as advocates, we should remind them that climate finance is a ask from us, and they should commit to that in the long run.
Okay. I think overall, thank you so much. And
No problem. I love talking to everyone here. It's a pleasure.
Bruce?
Adnan, I get to give you the formal thank you, but I think all the women here on the screen would be happy to give you a big clap. There's been so much you've presented today in clear terms that we can take away and wrestle with as we come up with our own messaging to the Canadian government to remind them that this is so important.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Adnan, for your time and for all the help that you've been in the background over the last few weeks and months.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I will end with something I shared with Ruth. What is a group of grandmothers called? I still don't have the answer for it. My mother asked, like, have you ever talked about it? A group of grandmothers. What is the collective noun for it?
We'll have to work on that.
We'll work on that one.
Grandmothers.
We're mom.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Honey, look after yourself.
How about an irresistible force of grandmothers?
That works.
Someone said wisdom of grandmothers. I love that.
Yeah, a wisdom. That's great.
Works for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Take
you,
good care.
everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.